Hi everyone, it's Julie from sproutsandstems.com here. Today's video is going to be Tradescantia nanouk care. After this video, I will be filming my propagation video, so if you're interested in that video will be out next week. Before we get into the video, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any new planty content, and check out my Patreon for exclusive planty content and access to message me with plant questions and whatnot. The last few videos that I posted there were how often I water each one of my plants, tips for dealing with low light and house plants, more than just having only low light plants, like more helpful tips for what you can do if you have low light. And I'm going to be posting my repotting my giant Monstera deliciosa on my Patreon soon. So little commercial, and now we'll get into the video. I was really excited. I actually found this plant at the store yesterday for $3.85, and it's in such great condition, honestly. It has like a few little crispy leaves, but we'll get into crispy leaves on this plant because that can be a thing. But I had to pick this up, especially because it was so cheap, because this plant has a special place in my heart. So back when I first started writing on my website, my care and propagation guide post for this plant was one of my first posts that like helped my website grow and became really popular, because this a few years ago was a really big trending plant on the houseplant scene. So this plant has a special place in my heart. I haven't had one in a little bit now, but I just had to pick this up. And Tradescantia nanouk is a type of wandering dude. If you don't know what wandering dudes are, it is the new non-offensive term for what has been referred to for a long time as wandering Jew plants. But the nanouk has beautiful purple pink, almost looks like they've been like painted, purple pink base with like painted green almost. So starting with light, this plant needs bright and direct light if you wanted to maintain this beautiful pinky purple variegation. Look, even the undersides are even more like, oh, it's so pretty. If you want this plant to have that, you need to keep it in bright and direct light. Also, see how it's like nice and compact? If it doesn't get plenty of light, it'll start to grow stretched out and leggy. And actually, I do have some old pictures of my previous nanouk looking really stretched out and leggy because it wasn't getting good light. If that's happening to your nanouk, it needs more light if you want it to stay nice and compact like this. Now, as for water / humidity, if this plant gets too dry, that's when it starts to develop these crispy leaf edges and tips. So that is a common problem with this plant. So don't get too frustrated if you see it happening. Like you can see there's little bit there, little bit there. So try to not let it completely dry out. Water it when the top like inch or so of the soil is dry. And as for humidity, I know the humidity levels in your home can be like harder to control, but if the air is very dry, this plant will get crispy edges and tips. If you have like a cute little cloche you can put on top of it, or if you have some kind of chamber like a fish tank, or I always refer to my greenhouse cabinet, but I know obviously that's like a bigger undertaking. Not everyone has one of those, but you can put it in a smaller kind of greenhouse, a terrarium. Things like that can help with humidity. And as for potting mix, like many other houseplants, just a regular well-draining potting mix is totally fine. You can literally just go to the store and buy a bag of houseplant potting mix, and that's perfect. You want it to retain some moisture since this plant doesn't want to dry out, but you don't want it to be sitting in like a pond of water, basically. So regular, well-drained potting mix is perfect. As for repotting, I have found that the Tradescantia nanouk likes to be snug and cozy and a little bit root bound in its pot. It does seem to push out more growth living in that scenario, a little bit root bound. But of course, there is always a line. You don't want it to get like too root bound. With this plant, there's no need to repot it regularly once a year. Just as long as it's growing and doing well, then personally, I would just leave it as is for as long as it's growing. And you can always check to see if maybe it's a little bit too root bound. If you notice the growth just stops, like stunted growth, you can look at the underside of the pot and see if there's a lot of roots coming out of the drainage holes, or you can gently even just like shimmy the plant out of its pot to actually look at the root ball. And if it's like a big coil, a big mass of roots all around the bottom, then yeah, you probably want to repot it. And you can repot your plants in general. It's a good rule of thumb to just go like 1 or 2 sizes up in a pot. You don't want to go too big and risk overpotting and overwatering your plant. Overpotting can lead to overwatering because there's too much, like when you water it, there's too much excess water in the large amount of soil that your plant can't like soak up. So this is the 3rd time I've started this section. The train, there's noises and the train comes and okay. So last but not least, fertilizing. So I have found that these plants can be a little sensitive to fertilizing. I personally like to just err on the side of caution with fertilizing. So I would typically fertilize this plant once a month during the growing season, which is the spring and summer. And I'd usually dilute that to half strength. So it's just a little bit of a boost, but you're not like giving it too much. It's better to err on the side of caution with fertilizer. That is the Tradescantia nanouk care guide. Let me know if you have any questions, what you think about this plant. I will be filming a propagation video right after this one, so you'll probably see me in the same outfit. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Check out my Patreon for more exclusive planty content. Thanks for watching today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.